Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Maple Grove Scripture Reading Podcast. So last time we were still in Elihu's storm speech, and he's been making this extended argument from creation, that the natural world itself is evidence of a God who's vast and purposeful and not answerable to anyone. He was cataloging what God does through weather. So you had snow and rain at his command, the breath of God producing ice, clouds moving at his direction. And then you had this line that closed it all out, that weather serves three purposes, really: to punish, to water the earth, and to show love. The same clouds, but different purposes, and only God knows which. Today, we're still in chapter 37, and Elihu stops describing what God does and turns directly to Job. And so we go through verses 14 through 20. Let me read through them. Listen to this, Job. Stop and consider God's wonders. Do you know how God controls the clouds and makes his lightning flash? Do you know how the clouds hang poised, those wonders of him who has perfect knowledge? You who swelter in your clothes when the land lies hushed under the south wind, can you join him in spreading out the skies, hard as a mirror of cast bronze? Tell us what we should say to him. We cannot draw up our case because of our darkness. Should he be told that I want to speak? Would anyone ask to be swallowed up? Have you ever been so deep in something hard, like a conflict, a difficult season, a situation that just won't resolve itself? You ever been so deep in that you just stopped noticing anything else? Like not even just small things, but big things. Like you're driving home, there's a beautiful sunset that would just stop you cold on any other day. And you just drive right through it because you've been running that same argument in your head for 3 weeks. Or you're sitting at dinner with the people that you love, but you're not really there. Like physically, yes, mentally, no, because you're still somewhere in that problem, building your case, rehearsing what you would say if you could just get somebody to understand. Like the wonders are right there, but you can't see them. You've closed down to everything except the problem. That's what Elihu's pointing to here. He says, stop and consider God's wonders. The word behind the stop means a deliberate halt, a posture of stillness. He's not asking Job to formulate an answer or get ready for the next round. He's asking him to just stop moving long enough and actually look at what's all around him. Job's been pressing forward for 36 some chapters, right? He's been arguing, he's been demanding, pressing his case, and Elihu is just asking him to do the one thing that is the hardest thing to do in the middle of real pain, to be still long enough to look at something. And then he asks a question. Do you know how the clouds hang poised? Clouds are full of water, right? You got enormous amounts of water in clouds, and they just hang there, suspended in the sky, not falling. Like we can describe some of the science behind it. You got the pressure gradients, the moisture, the conditions that cause precipitation to finally form. But knowing the science doesn't actually dissolve the strangeness of it. I mean, think about it. Next time you're outside on a heavy, cloudy day, just look up. Like, think about that. There's a mass of water over your head, and it's just hanging there. How? Elihu doesn't know. Job doesn't know. Nobody standing in that conversation knows. Elihu calls them the wonder of him who has perfect knowledge. But there is someone, he says, for whom this isn't not a mystery. Somebody who sees the whole system clearly because he was the one who designed it, and he's the one who sustains it. And that someone is not Job, it's not Elihu, and it certainly isn't any of us. The argument Elihu has been building across these chapters, it's not about crushing Job into silence. It's about helping him see the scale. Job's been pressing his case against what he sees as the injustice of God's governance, the way the world is being run, and the way his own life has been handled. And Elihu's question is a fair one. Do you understand the governance well enough to evaluate it? You can't explain the clouds. The thing you're auditing operates at a level that you can't fully observe. And that's not an answer to Job's suffering. It doesn't explain why a man who did nothing deserving of this level of pain is in the condition he's in. but it's an honest word about the limits of what any of them are working with when they try to evaluate what God is doing. And then comes this question. He says, "You who swelter in your clothes when the land lies hushed under the south wind, can you join him in spreading out the skies, hard as a mirror of cast bronze?" Now, notice where it starts. It's not with stars or galaxies. It's not with the moral structure of the universe. It starts with sweat. He's asking, can you explain why you're sweltering in your clothes in the south wind right now? Job has been pressing for a full accounting of why God runs the world the way he does. Biggest possible questions about suffering and justice are what he wants to ask. And Elihu says, okay, maybe start smaller. Can you even explain why you're hot? Because Elihu can't explain it either. That's the whole point. The contrast, it's deliberate. It's not to humiliate Job, but to name something true about all of them. The same person who says, I need to understand why God allowed this in my life, what is the purpose behind all of this, can't account for a basic physical sensation in the breeze. It doesn't mean that the big questions don't matter. It means we're all working with less than we think. There's a ceiling on what we can comprehend from where we stand. And it's a whole lot lower than we tend to assume when we're making our case. Then the question escalates. He says, can you join God in spreading out the skies? Elihu sees the sky as a solid expanse, a vast dome polished like a cast metal mirror. Now, we, of course, understand it differently, but the question really is the same regardless of how you picture it. Were you there when it was made? Can you explain how it was done? It's the same question that God himself is going to ask in chapter 38, a whole lot more forcefully and at much greater length, where he says, where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Elihu's just kind of opening that door a little bit. Not just God is great, but something a little bit more precise. You weren't present for any of this. You can't explain any of it. And yet you're asking for a comprehensive audit of how it's all being run. And there's something else in that image of the sky as a mirror held above you that you cannot see into from below. What's reflected there is God's own view of things, the full picture of what's happening in this world and why. Job doesn't have access to that, and none of us do. The view from up there is not available down here. Well, then something unexpected happens. Elihu says, tell us what we should say to him. We cannot drop our case because of our darkness. Now, for most of this speech, Elihu has been instructing and correcting Job, and now he says, we cannot draw up our case. We are in the dark. Now, you could read this as sarcasm, where he says, if you're so wise, Job, tell us what you would say to God. And there's probably some of that in there, but there's, I think, something a little bit more genuine happening as well. Elihu has been undone by what he's been describing. I mean, his heart was pounding back in verses 1-5, right? He's been watching this storm gather while he's speaking. And the questions that he's been asking Job, how do the clouds hang? Why do you swelter in your clothes? Are questions that he can't answer either. He says, we cannot draw up our case because of our darkness. That's real, right? Elihu includes himself in there. None of them can see enough to build the kind of case that they would need to successfully argue their situation before God. The darkness isn't Job's problem alone. It's the condition of all of them. Finite people looking at a universe that outruns their comprehension literally on every side. It's actually one of the things that separates Elihu from the other three friends. Bildad, Zophar, Eliphaz, they all spoke with a ton of confidence because they had it all figured out. They could explain what God was doing because their theology was tight and their categories were clear. Elihu at this moment is saying he doesn't know, not fully. The storm he's been describing has gotten to him. He's standing in the same darkness as Job, and he thinks any real approach to God has to start there with that acknowledgement. So then the last question in the passage is probably the sharpest. Should he be told that I want to speak? Would anyone ask to be swallowed up? Job has been asking throughout this book for exactly this, an audience with God. He wanted to argue his case directly and get an answer. And the book doesn't condemn that desire. God's going to answer him, but the spirit of the request matters. The way that Job's been framing it has assumed a kind of rough equality between the parties. Like Job presents his case, God responds, fairness gets sorted out. Elihu is saying that the encounter on those terms would be catastrophic. Not because God is cruel or unpredictable, but because of what God actually is. Would anyone ask to be swallowed up? Like, that's not a word against lament or prayer. The Psalms are full of that, and God never turns away from it. This is a word about the difference between crying out to God and setting yourself up as his evaluator, between needing him and auditing him. That's where Elihu leaves things for now. The storm that he's been describing isn't going away. In fact, it looks like a real storm may be brewing. It's getting closer. And what's coming next is going to change everything about this conversation. So next time, we're going to be in verses 21 through 24. We're going to finish out chapter 37. And we're going to see the golden light out of the north. Elihu's last words before God speaks. Hope you have a great day. We'll talk again soon. God bless.